Welcome to the top of the morning. My name is Just Kumar, and we have a special episode here for you. We are at Pelosi restaurant in Little Italy, and we have the former Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro, is going to be with us. All right, and as you can see behind me, there's an old cappuccino machine over here. You have some patrons, and you're going to hear some noise in the background, but it's just people enjoying this fine restaurant. All right, well, before I personally interview him, we had him talking candidly about various topics, so have a look at this.
So you want to talk about your father a little bit?
Well, my father was a great guy. My father served in the House of Delegates for 8 years, the City Council for 4 years, the Congress of the United States for 12 years, Mayor of Baltimore for 3 terms, 12 years. He served as a member of the Federal Renegotiation Board for 8 years. He was appointed by President Kennedy, and he served for about 8 years on the parole board of the state of Maryland. He was appointed by Governor Mandel. He lived a very full life. He was born and raised and lived on Albemarle Street all of his life. He was raised at 235 Albemarle Street, and he died at 245 Albemarle Street.
All right, well, I hope you're enjoying the show. We're over here at Pelosi with former Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, well, welcome back. Let's see what else the former Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro has to say.
Edgar Allan Poe, in my opinion, is a ghost that still wanders the streets of Baltimore. Naturally, one of the finest literary accomplishments is his Ravens, quote, "The Raven Nevermore." And we have a pretty good football team called the Ravens. So there's a tie-in between our football and our art. If things go any worse for the Ravens, we may resurrect Edgar Allan Poe, and he may be our starting quarterback. The Admiral Fell Inn was an abode for many of the sailors who traveled the seas, and Baltimore was always a great port city, so it encouraged a tremendous amount of traffic that was welcomed and prospered in the area of Fells Point. The Admiral Inn has a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but being haunted, and many a ghost are found wandering around. But that's really a storyteller. The Constellation has been an integral part of the history of Baltimore City. We've housed or birthed the Constellation for many, many years, and then a time came when whether or not it was worth keeping the Constellation, or as one of our local politicians drew reference to the fact we ought to take it out into the middle of the Chesapeake and destroy it, sink it. But thank God that didn't prevail. It was a tremendous civic effort to restore the Constellation to its present form. And it's probably one of the most historical visiting points for tourists in our city. That we in Baltimore are proud of the McCormick Spice company whose origins were in the Inner Harbor along Light Street near the intersection with Pratt, but strictly on Light Street. I knew Mr. Charlie McCormick, who was one of the founders and the director and the vision for the McCormick company as we know it today. And we've always been proud of their position in the business community and the contributions that they make to this city. The Baltimore fire of 1904 destroyed almost all of downtown Baltimore, especially the business district, and was threatening the Little Italy section of Baltimore City where we're taping this interview. And we in the St. Leo Parish maintained that St. Anthony converted a miracle here, performed a miracle here. The fire swept through downtown Baltimore and was threatening the residential area of East Baltimore. Had it crossed the Jones Falls, it would have struck the same area. We prayed, and for some reason, the fire hoses that failed on Calvert Street and Charles Street and St. Paul Street all of a sudden burst out with strong water flow, and the fire was stopped. It never crossed the Jones Falls. It's one of the biggest miracles in the history of the 1904 fire in Baltimore.
Termship.
Baltimore is a great city, and at one time, we had the greatest diversification of business and industry of any city in the nation. We're primarily a port city. At one time, we had the biggest steel mill and shipyard, the Bethlehem Sparrows Point shipyard. Today, we're primarily servicing the Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is the #1 employer in Baltimore City, and we're very close and employment ties to the city of Baltimore, the state of Maryland, and the federal government. So we still have diversification, but it's in another avenue, so to speak. Great food here, great restaurants, great hotels. We're the cultural center of the state. We're the athletic center of the state as far as football and baseball are concerned. We have the best hospitals in any city in the nation. It's a great city, and we're flourishing, and we welcome people to visit us. Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to hear and see of your success as the first female mayor of Salem. We too here in Baltimore have our first female mayor, Mayor Sheila Dixon, and as you know, my sister Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. So we congratulate all the women who've made that accomplishment.
All right, well, I hope you're enjoying the show. When we come back, I'm going to have a personal interview one-on-one with former Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro, so stay tuned. Welcome you, Mr. Tommy D'Alessandro, Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro, to the top of the morning show.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
So, former mayor, can you tell us about the Fort McHenry and how that impacted the history of Baltimore?
Well, there's no question that the most important historical activity in the city, probably in the nation, was the formulation of our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, at Fort McHenry. It's a great tourist attraction even now, but I would like to see it expanded. I'd like to see a little ship out in the inner harbor at the outskirts of the Chesapeake Bay where Francis Scott Key was actually standing watching the fight at Fort McHenry, where he wrote the Star Spangled Banner. I think if we can combine the fort and this ship, it would be a terrific acceleration of the kind of tourists that we should have in that area. That's our biggest. Whenever the national anthem is sung, knowing that its roots are in Baltimore, we can all be proud.
Yeah. Speaking of roots in Baltimore, well, can you tell us a little bit about back in the day when you were...
Well, Baltimore's always been identified as a city of ethnic backgrounds, tremendous diversification. Irish, Italians, Poles, Lithuanians, Germans, blacks. And it's been that way from its very inception. This was an immigrant city. People, once they got here, stood here. And different conclaves. And that so-called melting pot helped to build the city and to make this city what we think is a great city. Now, with the passing of time, the makeup of the city has changed. Tremendous expressways and highways and urban sprawl has put most of the population in wheels, and they travel and set up their residence outside the city. But we are growing in Baltimore City. We lost some population in the years going by, but we're growing. We're coming back. We have extensive urban renewal all along the shoreline. Tremendous growth, commercially and residentially. And we still are in the center for medicine, for the arts, for health. So Baltimore's on the move.
All right, well, you might hear some background music. We're over here at Leggies. It's a great Italian restaurant. It's a great area to be, the Little Italy. You know, tell us about Little Italy.
Well, I was born and raised in Little Italy.
Oh, wow.
And in those days, Little Italy was strictly a residential community. 95% of Italian-American extraction. But as the years pass by, Italian food is a magnet. It draws people from all over the city, all over the Mid-Atlantic states to come to eat. And the growth of the restaurants are such that from 2 or 3 that I knew in my young days, it's now about 27 restaurants in a 6-block area, which is really a tourist attraction for Baltimore. And with that, some of the residential flavor is now missing. And it's strictly commercial. But it's still a great neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're all tied into St. Leo.
Yeah, your whole family's political involvement here in Baltimore has done so much for the city of Baltimore. So we thank you and your whole family.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments.
All right, so can you tell us something about your sister, Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy was born here in Little Italy. She went to school to the Institute of Notre Dame under the auspices of the School Sisters of Notre Dame. And when she graduated from there, she went to Trinity College in Washington, where she met her husband, Paul Pelosi. They married and have 5 children, and he resided in San Francisco. She followed him to San Francisco, where she set up her adult life. And it was there that she got interested in politics after her family grew and went to college and all that. And she was elected to the Congress in 1987, and she's been there ever since. She's held all the power positions in the Democratic caucus. This is a great state, and this is a great city. And they're in the hands of leadership of capable people who are facing up to their responsibilities and trying to solve the problems that they face, which will inure to the benefit of our future generations, our children and our children's children. So I feel very confident about the future of this city and the future of this state.
You have been able to talk in a way that I think has very much energized Democrats about the connection between policy and social justice, like we just were. Policy and important outcomes for the country. One of the policy fights that you won, which I think had profound political impact, it doesn't get a lot of attention when people talk about your rise to power as Speaker, was right after George W. Bush was reelected in 2004. He was reelected in November 2004. As soon as he was inaugurated in January 2005, he set out around the country on a barnstorming tour to privatize Social Security. And that went great. But when he started to do this, he thought he was going to win, and his poll numbers looked good. And you were a key part of what I think has to be universally acknowledged as a Democratic defeat of that Republican initiative. How did you beat George W. Bush on that subject?
Well, it was a decision that we made that we were going to preserve Social Security. I mean, this is a pillar of our society, of security, retirement security for our seniors, and all that that meant to the rest of the family. And so when I had the opportunity to become a leader, of course it was my goal to attain the majority. And we went to some people on the outside, to the private sector, and said, if you were, I don't know any of these things, but if you were, say, Tylenol and you wanted to be Advil, I don't know which one is first, but if you were number 2 and you wanted to be number 1, what would you do? And they told us, you have to, a 4-step initiative on how we do that. It'll take longer if you want to be so joyful. But anyway, the point is, that was, say, December, after Senator Kerry had lost the presidential. That January, President Bush gave really a gift to those who wanted to protect Social Security by saying that he was going to privatize Social Security. I remind you, he's newly elected. He's 58% in the polls. That's very high, especially after a tough fight. And he was very much up here. And our members, working with Senator Reid, Leader Reid in the Senate, with our members, House and Senate, we decided that we were going to go out there to do this. But we had to be unified. It took discipline. And I think you may recall, Rachel, that at the time, we made a decision. I know the publics who are hosts today, thank you, Judy and Peter, they were so much a part of helping us with this. At the time we said, President Bush wants to privatize Social Security, the Democrats want to preserve Social Security. And that was the fight. Social Security privatized. But people said, oh, why don't you have a plan of your own? Important Democrats were saying, poor Democrats in the House, they don't have a plan of their own. Exactly. Our plan was Social Security. And the private sector advisors said, if you start saying, well, we're going to age of this, the tax, the this, you will be confused with what he is doing. You must not offer another plan. It has to be about his plan. My colleagues who are here will tell you that on a weekly basis at least, members would come in and say, is it time for us to have a plan yet? And believe me, we probably had 250 plans, House and Senate combined. Is it time for us to have a plan? And I can say to them, never does never work for you. In terms of the contrast, Social Security, privatized. And that's the beginning of the end. And because our members trusted us, Harry and me, trusted the two of us, then we were able to keep people together. President Bush, really a lovely man. No, it really, no, we disagree in terms of policy. But he would say, I'm going to 23 states in 23 days, something like that. And I would say, I want you to go to 46 states in 46 days, and I'll pay your way. Because we are going to be there to inoculate against your message, to protect Social Security and educate as to what you said doesn't work. So at the end of it, I said, nothing, so. And he said, well, I achieved my goal. I said, you did? Thank God you didn't. He said, no, my goal was to raise awareness as to the challenge that Social Security faces. Well, that's a different goal than what he said. But he gave us the perfect issue. But for us, it wasn't an issue. It was a value. It was an ethic. It was who we are as a country. And we were going to fight that fight, even if it meant taking the slings and arrows of our friends who were saying, why don't you have a plan? 4 years, they don't have a plan. Some, even in the media, saying, how can you possibly come here without a plan? We have a plan. It's called Social Security. So with that would really, by September, he was at 38. And, but we worked, you take this chance to say, we worked with President Bush on many issues. We passed the biggest energy bill ever to pass in our country, lowering the CAFE standards, emissions, and with conservation and efficiencies and the rest. Hugely important bill. We worked with him on his version of the stimulus package was to make sure it was refundable so that poor people and poor families and families with children could get the stimulus too. We worked with him on PEPFAR. That was a great thing that President Bush did, but it would not have happened without a Democratic Congress funding it from $4 billion to $8 billion, and some of the people who work on that are the ladies out here. But anyway, some of our colleagues who work on that issue know that it was the House and the Congress that made that possible. And we worked with him on probably the most unpopular bill that anybody will ever vote for, ever, TARP, because we were told that if we had not acted, there would be no economy in 4 days. No economy. Mr. Bernanke, Mr. Chairman, do you agree with the characterization that Secretary Paulson has given to the state of the financial institutions in our country? And he, an expert on the Great Depression, said, if we do not act immediately, we will not have an economy by Monday. This was Thursday night. So we did that. We worked with President Bush. The Republicans did not want to vote with that. I don't want to get partisan. But they didn't want to vote with that. And they didn't. They took the Democratic vote to make that happen.
That confidence has to be repeated many times over in all the little social gatherings that we have and all the political arguments that we have. But I feel very confident about the future.
Right, so what do you think the future has for Baltimore?
Well, from Fells Point in the southwest through Canton and Dundalk in the southeast, tremendous growth, dwarfing what we see in the Inner Harbor. Tremendous growth. I think the key neighborhoods in the city have been stabilized. We do have a problem with crime, and I think we're confronting it for the first time down in the streets at the level of crime. And the latest statistics show that we're making some progress, but that area is a very tough problem facing all of urban America. So I feel very confident about the future of this city.
You know, we recently interviewed Christine from Stella's Bridal, and they were very excited. They were showing a plate that I guess your parents had given them?
That's right. When anybody got married and sent an invitation to my father and mother, or the christening of a child, something like that, a special and blessed occasion, my father and mother would get the invitation, engrave it into a plate, and send it to the people as a gift. In my travels throughout the city, I'll bump into so many people that rush in to show me the plate. It's all over the place, but it was a good gesture, and people have them now 50 and 60 years later.
Yeah, that was a great gift idea. Well, Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro, we really want to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your insights and talking about Baltimore.
Well, I hope I made some contribution to your coverage. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay. On board Constellation, history comes alive as visitors touch, feel, and experience what life was like for sailors during the Civil War. Just bring your imagination. But it's the sloop of war Constellation that's here in Baltimore today, and the Chesapeake Bay has always been central to her story.
Throughout her century of service, Constellation served in and out of the Chesapeake Bay. It was kind of like coming home every time she returned to the Chesapeake.
We fire the cannon, turn the capstan, and ring the bell daily. And we recommend the free self-guided audio tour, which comes in 2 flavors, one perfect for children, the other for adults. Plus, there's the ever-popular Powder Monkey Tour for kids and hands-on adult tours like A Ship as a Machine and Black Sailors in Navy Blue. Groups can also come aboard and sling their hammocks in our overnight program or host special events. So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.